The state's plan to develop an inland port is facing resistance. Back in 2018, the state legislature passed a bill establishing the Inland Port Authority and designated a little more than 16,000 acres for the development in Salt Lake City's northwest quadrant. Supporters say its proximity to air, rail, and road make it an ideal location. But there is also fierce opposition showing up at every open meeting. You see the video right there. Jack Hedge is the executive director for the Utah Inland Port Authority. He's here to provide us with his perspective on the potential and the controversy as well. Yes. Jack, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for being here.
Glenn, thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
Good to have you. Let's start off with your background. Tell us a little bit about you and what you've done leading up to this point.
Yeah, so I came here from LA. I was at the Port of Los Angeles. I've been in the port business now for about 15 years, but I'm not an LA guy. I was born and raised in Texas and spent a number of years in the Pacific Northwest. So this is a chance to come back someplace closer to my roots, give me a chance to do some of the things that I love, skiing, hiking, maybe even learn to fly fish now that I'm here. So.
I do all of those, and this is a perfect spot for doing that, no doubt about that. Hey, let's talk a little bit about your interest in your job. You saw this opportunity. Why were you interested in it?
You know, it's really a unique opportunity in the logistics space. As far as I know, anywhere in the world. There's not another place that I know of that has the opportunity to really build a sustainable, truly 21st century logistics facility, inland port, and do it from the ground up. And it's really a legacy type project, a generational type project. Just don't have any of these opportunities anywhere in the world.
Let's talk about your vision. Where do you see this going? Paint that picture for us.
So I think, you know, I think you have the opportunity here to build a truly sustainable port complex, port facility, to move the goods and products that we all need for our economy, to sustain our economy as it continues to grow. You've got to be able to get products and goods in here and out of here. And to do it in a way that is forward thinking, we're looking 10, 20, 30, 50 years down the road about what's going to be needed and building out the system so that it fits and won't become obsolete going out that far. That's really the kind of the goal.
So we kind of mentioned the proximity to rail, air, and the road right there. Talk about why all those three things are important.
Well, those three things are important because they are kind of the fundamental building blocks of a good logistics system, facility. And those investments were made, you know, generations ago, kind of forward looking. So this is an opportunity to build on those things. And that confluence of road, rail, air, and where we sit geographically in relation to the West Coast ports is really unique. And so it's an opportunity to really build on that and build on that crossroads of the West that Utah has positioned itself as for a long, long time.
Talk about what you see as this being the economic impact on the state of Utah.
Well, I think it is, it's a critical piece to have if we're going to grow local businesses that are here now, who are looking to have the most sustainable supply chain that they can have to get their goods to their markets, as well as getting the goods in here that we need to have to continue to grow and sustain our economy. It's not if you build it, they will come kind of thing. Logistics doesn't really work that way, but it is a necessary ingredient to having a good, strong economy.
So what type of impact could it have on the economy dollar-wise, do you see?
It could be billions of dollars, trillions of dollars.
And then what about efforts to help rural Utah benefit from this also?
Yeah, I think there's been the idea of the satellite, hub and spoke satellites. I think satellite is a little more accurate description. Okay. Satellite, the idea behind the satellite ports is to work with different places around the state and businesses in those areas around the state and local governments around the areas, in those areas around the state. What are the logistical facilities that they need to be able to build their economies, build their supply chains, get their goods to market better, get their products in better. And it doesn't necessarily mean everything has to come into Salt Lake. There's some of that going on now. We may be able to divert some of that and keep it, you know, don't bring it here unless it has to be here, I guess is part of the goal.
You talk about the opportunity to build from the ground up. Right. You have port experience in other areas. Based on that, how do you see that, what you have in mind here comparing and competing with other ports that you've done business with across the country?
Well, other ports and other facilities that have been built around the country were built in the, they were built in the past. They were built using older technologies, older transportation modes, things like that. What we're going to do here is we're sort of mapping to best practices. So we're not just looking around the country, we're looking around the world. Who's doing things now that are more forward-looking, more forward-thinking? What are those things that we can replicate here? How do we do it in a way that is more strategic and more forward-thinking? And how do we avoid environmental impacts, community impacts, to the extent that we can? How do we avoid those things rather than try to claw them back later? How do we avoid them in the first place?
Okay, that's a good transition because I wanted to get into that next. The opposition. You've seen it playing out in our community. A recent poll from Utah Policy said that 58% of Salt Lake City voters believe that it should not move forward. What are you doing to address concerns that you're hearing from the community? Most of those are along the lines of environmental. They're afraid of the impact it will have on our environment. And we all know well, and it's really coming up here pretty soon, just how ugly inversion season can be here in the state of Utah.
Yeah, I mean, air quality is by far and away the #1 concern of most folks in the area, as is the impact of traffic, as is the impact on the wetlands that surround the lake, and the impacts on the ecosystem around the lake. There are a lot of things that we're taking a look at. So we've been engaged in a pretty a robust public outreach program to try to, first of all, find out what the concerns and the issues were that people were concerned about. We're mapping that to a group of scenarios, and we'll be coming back out to the public. And what we're going to be looking at doing is, if we insert the Port Authority comes to the table, and we can insert the public good. How do we insert the public good? And what does inserting the public good mean to development out there in that area? And that's what we're focused on.
So what are some ideas you've heard so far that you think, yeah, we need to do that to ensure the proper air quality when it comes to this port?
Yeah, I think trying to incentivize to the extent that it's available and into the future. How do we incentivize the use of near zero emissions technologies for trucks, for cargo handling equipment? How do we improve transit so that workers going into and out of that area have options rather than just driving their cars? How do we deal with other issues like solar energy generation, things like that, which can reduce greenhouse gases in terms of consumption? But also looking too at how do we look at minimizing the impact of stormwater runoff into the wetlands so that we eliminate any pollutants that run off into the wetlands? How do we use dark sky lighting so we don't disrupt bird flight patterns? There's a whole gamut of things that we're looking at trying to do.
And these are all things you are committed to making sure happen in the development.
Yes, these are working into our business plan. That'll be coming before our board early next year.
Okay, speaking of the board, you can't even have a board meeting anymore without protesters coming in.
Or a city council meeting either, if you look at last night.
Right,
yeah.
and taking over the way they do. What do you make of that tactic that you're seeing play out?
I understand, I think, why people are upset. There's been a lack of information. It's because we're in the planning process, and planning is hard and takes a long time. Some of this planning probably should have been done prior to the Port Authority being done. It should have been done back when it was originally zoned. So we're coming back now and sort of having to do it after the fact. I think it raises a lot of questions, and I think people are right to be concerned.
Are you having conversations with those who are organizing these rallies?
We've been reaching out to just about everybody, and we've been trying to meet with anybody who will meet with us and talk to us. What are their concerns? What are their issues? What are they not hearing? And how can we address those issues and those things with them? And I think I don't know that we're changing a lot of minds, but we at least are engaging and we're having those conversations.
Okay, thank you so much for your time. We will continue to watch this as it moves forward. Thanks for joining us on Inside Utah Politics.
Thank you very much, Glenn.